Good evening.
Good evening.
God bless you, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. It is Begin Again. I'm your host, Dr. Ray Johnson, and I'm here with my lovely bride,
Mrs. Johnson.
I happen to be an author, educator, leadership development coach, and this is Begin Again, second time around. And we want to take some time and help you begin again. What you hear, Israel Houghton in the background, and that was our song that we actually exited out on from our ceremony, honey, when we came together. Why don't you tell them who you are real quickly?
Hello, Mrs. Johnson. I'm a worshiper, a writer, and a woman in love with this man right here, and I thank God for her.
I happen to be a man that is in love with this woman, and I wish indeed that every day was Sunday. And so, honey, we've been taking some time to spend a few moments discussing, what it takes to be married, what it takes for second time or next time around relationships to be able to make it. And so in the dating world today, it is kind of difficult out there. And I'm so glad that we're no longer in that process. I know that you would say a little something different, but I think that these are indeed necessary conversations for new beginnings, but also sometimes necessary endings.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah. How we got started in this was just sharing a little bit of what we learned along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And as we've shared a little bit of what we've learned along the way, what we thought, I believe the Lord gave this to me, that anybody can begin again in several different areas of their lives, but not necessarily just relationships. We came up with something called the acid test.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about the acid test, we're looking at the toxicity levels of whether something can be consumed or not in terms of a beverage, or whether it's toxic or not and cannot be consumed. And you want a relationship that actually can be consumed so that it's a blessing to each other.
Yes.
And that's measured by the pH balance.
Right.
For us, that stands for personal happiness. And so we have a whole acronym about that. We want you to stay tuned with us and look forward to us gathering together for a Begin Again, second time or next time around retreat as we come together to do this. But not that we've learned everything.
Right. We are learning along the way. It's a day-to-day process.
That's right. It's a day-to-day process. And so we're learning along the way. God bless you, Sister Erica. Thank you for tuning in on tonight. Feel free to share this. We're going to try to grab as many people as we can. So as we've been kind of going through this a little bit, we've been doing something called Hot Topics.
Yes.
And so in the Hot Topics discussion, we've been talking about, things that you've got to discuss before you get married. And all too often, people don't take time to discuss the things that are necessary, particularly in a second time or next time around relationship, before they actually come together.
I think sometimes we don't think about what we need to discuss.
Yeah.
We don't think about it and don't realize that there should be a discussion, because the feelings that euphoria that you have at the very beginning, especially when you first meet that one that seems to complete everything that you thought you were missing.
Yeah.
You don't realize that you need to have that conversation because reality hasn't quite set in just yet.
Right. Since that reality hasn't quite set in, we've got butterflies and all that kind of stuff that's kind of going on in the stomach. And then you've got the apprehensiveness because you've already have maybe dated before, maybe been married before. And for many, they're not looking necessarily, if you will, to be actively engaged and involved in a second time or next time around relationship. So they come in with a lot of barriers and things that are put in place. But you've got to be level-headed, but also open-minded. Those are two things I think are critically important in terms of re-engaging again. Somebody type that in tonight. God bless you, Sister Erica. God bless you, Mother. You've got to be level-headed and open-minded because God wants to begin to create an opportunity to bless you. But that opportunity to bless you a second time or next time around can oftentimes kind of go awry because we're not level-headed and we're too starry-eyed, or we're not open-minded and we can turn off the person that God really does have for us in this next and new season in our lives. Consider this with us tonight. These are things that we talked about that have got to be discussed before you enter into a next level or next time around relationship. You've got to discuss bills. Because most of us, parenting styles, you may have children who are teenagers or late teenagers or even preteens. You've got to discuss credit and debt and religion. You've got to discuss how to deal with family. You've got to discuss what beliefs will be instilled in your children. That one, I believe, is critically important. You've got to discuss childhood traumas, sexual expectations, partner expectations, financial expectations, family health, mental health history. You've got to discuss what your bucket lists are, dream home, careers, education, political views. And look at this, whatever else comes to mind, simply because love is not enough. It is not enough. And so that being the case, and with that understanding, love is not enough, it's so important to actually make sure that people spend time discussing those kinds of things before they engage in a second time or next time around relationship. And so I think that's critically important. What do you say before we move fully into tonight's topic about those topic areas in terms of discussion those?
Well, political views, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I would have never thought to discuss political views with my future spouse.
Right.
I don't even know if we probably hit on the topic when something came on, because we had elections, and all kinds of things. But there are certain topics you don't even think about. As a discussion, I don't think political one would have been one. Some really have. It depends on what your interests are, really.
Right.
Because sometimes the politics of the world, they come into play when it's going to affect your money and affect your family.
There you go.
But not necessarily your day to day. You don't think about it.
Right.
But it depends on where you are. It depends on who it is, because other people consider their political views just as important as religion.
Absolutely.
It's just as important as religion. So it just depends on the type of person that you are and what you find interesting.
Absolutely. What I think they mean there when they talk about political views is actually your value system.
Okay.
In terms of what's important for you in terms of your day-to-day living. And remember this, all politics is local. And so there's a term that we have in politics called NIMBY, not in my backyard. So the moment that something starts to take place in your backyard and in your environment,
once it affects you,
everything changes. So discussing political views and even religious views to understand your value system, because values are things that we make decisions by. And so that's a critically important part. Tonight's topic, let's just dive right on in. Begin again. We're asking the question tonight: if you're dating in a second time around relationship, if you're thinking about coming together again in a second time around relationship, are they marriageable? Are they marriageable? And so this topic and this thought actually kind of came up when I was actually viewing and scrolling through some of my social media feeds and found this great friend of mine, Sister Dana, and her husband, Sean. They were interviewing one of the marriage therapists in our area. I won't give it all away. Just take a few minutes. Want you to tune in to this and check this out. And let's see if people are marriageable.
In your book, you have a chapter called Are You Marriageable? And so I want to know, can you speak for a little bit about what is marriageable and how do people know if they're marriageable or not?
Don't go into a serious relationship with a person who's not in a position to marry. So, do they have a job? Are they a person that has worked on other relationships in their life? Do they honor their parents? Do they keep their commitments? Have they dealt with that baggage in their past that is going to creep into your marriage, whether you want it to or not? And so being marriageable is a person who is, single and available to be married. So let's just talk about that.
Right.
Let's not be scamming on other people's spouses or other, again, you don't take the celebrity cues on that one. Yeah. But then they are just, they are in a position to be married. They are an adult. They are contributing to society.
Listen, she she broke it down and got all the way in there. Are they marriageable or not? Are they single? Number one, are they available to be married? Because you've got to ask those tough questions right early on. Are they single? And sometimes you got to check a database. I saw one particular feed one time that said, we're out on this date. And if I was able to post this picture publicly somewhere on some other kind of social media site, is there anybody that could claim you? Wow. Could claim the fact that they are with you. So that part of are they single and are they available, that's important. Are they a contributor to society? I think she broke it all the way down and asking the question about are they marriageable or not? Right. Because we've got all kind of stuff that goes on. Tonight, we're having this conversation tonight about are they marriageable or not. You know, honey, before we dive in and give some nuggets and give some points tonight, if you haven't shared this, make sure you share it and get it to somebody, because tonight's going to be a good night. God bless you, Sister Davida Gilbert. Thank you for tuning in on tonight. I really want to, before we dive in, I think it's important that we give some disclaimers. Okay. And so, number one, I think it's too difficult to determine if someone is marriageable or not in today's time, because so much of what we will discuss tonight, many don't find out until after they are married.
That is true.
This is why it is critical to date someone, or dating, I should say, is essential in the process of beginning to move into a next time or begin again around relationship. And so it's critical to watch people over time, because their patterns really become their habits. And those patterns that become habits, they don't change immediately, automatically. That's why you can get a good glimpse, if you will, if somebody is marriageable or not. Your thoughts about that?
When you say over time, because I have a couple of thoughts about that,
Sure.
because you don't want to waste years watching somebody who will never commit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's some signals, some red flags that go off probably within the first couple of dates, but you ignore them.
Do it.
So, you know, when the way to know where somebody is just listen to them talk.
Mm-hmm.
What are they talking about? Is the only thing they can find a conversation about related sexually?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because that excitement of when you first, and all they can do is talk about your body, or talk about your, you know, talk about certain things that are physical, but not necessarily spiritual, or not necessarily psychological, but or material. All they seem to see is the sexual part of it. And they're excited about that, but they can't see past it. So you can start figuring that out very early. Now, you want to be sexually attracted to the person, yes, because you don't want to wake up with somebody one day and say, "Lord have mercy, he ugly." You know, you don't want that, or she is not what I thought she. You know, so you want, just because they have, you know, some of the credentials you want, if you're not attracted to them, why are you wasting your time?
It's a no-brainer.
You know, but sometimes in a season of desperation, you take what you can get, and we've got to stop talking to ourselves and saying that this is all I can get, or this is the best that I can do. So when it comes to watching somebody over time, you can pretty much start to figure out what's their agenda and what's on their mind just by listening to what they talk about. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, and the mouth tells on you.
Absolutely.
And it usually tells on them in the first couple of dates. I don't suggest for anybody to date so long when they know that the person has told them, "I'm not looking to get married." When they say that, they've already stated to you what their agenda is. I'm just here to have a good time.
Absolutely. As we go through this tonight, it's going to be hot topics. We want you to continue to put your questions and comments inside of the comment section. We're going to answer some of those as we go through this tonight. Absolutely listen to what people have had to say, and then also listen to what's not being said, and then listen or pay attention to the things that they will not do. And so when you get to a point to determine if someone is marriageable or not, and understand what I'm getting ready to say about this, if they're not willing to claim you publicly, that's a red flag and a sign. Now, there's something to be said to keeping things quiet, private behind the scenes.
Sometimes we go public too soon.
You go a little bit public too soon. But after you have been dating a while, 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, in this phase of a second time or next time around, because you're normally somewhere between 35, 45, 55, 60. In that phase, it doesn't take you a long time to figure out whether or not somebody's marriageable or they're looking to get married, by listening to what they say, listening to what they don't say, listening to what they do, and paying attention to what they do not do. Those should be telltale signs for you to say, "Hey, I can't waste my time in getting involved into this." I'm ready to jump right on in and get into some of these M's tonight so that we can discuss some of them. I'm going to start with the very first one, and that one is mental health. Mental health. You can determine if someone is marriageable or not by taking a look at their mental health. And when I say that, I mean healing and wholeness from past trauma. Are they healed on one end, or they're constantly bringing up the history and the experience of what has happened to them, of what's taken place with them? Or are they in a place where they have gotten whole? Now, there's a difference between healing and wholeness, because wholeness has to do with nothing missing and nothing broken in their lives. That has to do with recovery time. have they recovered? And there are several areas that they've got to recover in. The other one about healing is they're not constantly mentioning this all the time, every 5 minutes. I think that that is a clear sign to let us know if someone is marriageable or not. Go ahead. Well, let me add this other part to it. Then I have you jump right in. Because if the trauma and drama is what drew you together, when you get healed and you move on and they don't, now that can become a moment where the two of you are headed in two different directions.
Yes, it could be a source of frustration.
And it can be a source of frustration for the dynamic of the relationship. Go ahead.
Okay. So when you talk about mental health, because that can be a very sensitive subject, sometimes abusers can come off as a charlatan, and you don't catch it.
Right.
You don't catch it.
Right.
But ask yourself, how do I feel when I'm with this person?
That's good.
So do you feel safe when you're around the person?
Yeah.
Do you see little small outbursts of anger that make you uncomfortable? That is one telltale sign. You need to start looking a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And you need to be a little more patient to see if this is something that is really a problem or were they just temporarily upset.
That's good.
When they're talking to you, are they talking down to you? And so that you feel inferior and you feel like your confidence is starting to wane the more you're around the person? Or do you feel like, oh, I absolutely have to have this person, and there's that codependency that develops with the person? You really want to look at all realms of mental health. And sometimes you need to do some research. This person said A, B, C, and D. I wonder what really they meant by it.
Right.
Because some people, they give you code and they don't realize that they're telling on themselves.
Right.
When they're trying to pull you away from other people and isolate you and don't encourage you to be with other friends. They only want you all the time. They have to know exactly where you are and what you're doing, what time you go to bed. You don't want that kind of control over your life. You want the freedom to be who you are, so you can continue to develop in who you are. Because over time you change. It's inevitable that we change over time. But you want somebody you can grow with and not somebody who's stuck on keeping you in this mold and don't want you to kind of spread your wings and fly. And I'm not saying fly the coop or fly away from them, but you want to be able to.
You might need to, depending upon the dynamic of the situation. But I'm still saying, go ahead.
You want somebody to push you forward into who you are becoming. We ought to be able to rejoice in who they're becoming and not intimidated. You got to be careful of those who are jealous or intimidated by your success, because that's another telltale sign. This is not where I need to be. This is making me uncomfortable. And when you start to feel that uneasiness or that uncomfortableness, allow that to speak to you. Don't shun it away and say, oh, that was just for tonight. Or maybe that was just something, that was just a, happenstance. No, pay attention to the signs.
That's good.
Don't be so caught up that you lose yourself and then end up losing your life over something that could have been stopped early on.
Absolutely. Paying attention to the signs. Tonight, we're talking about the person that we're thinking about dating. The person that we're dating, are they marriageable tonight or not? And we talked tonight, the very first one, mental health, healing and wholeness, the difference between the two, learning how to be able to see the signs, read the signs, and pay attention to the signs. And normally your gut instinct sometimes is the one that is correct.
Right. Can
Now,
I say this?
Go ahead.
Everybody is marriageable. But the quality of that marriage is going to be determined about how much time you take before you get into that situation. So they're like, whoa, I'm marriage material. Everybody thinks they're marriageable. But the quality and the state of that marriage and the state of your life is going to depend on how you treat the precursor to saying I do.
I would actually add in there security. When you're dealing with someone that is very insecure, those are the ones who are clingy and you've got it. And there's nothing wrong with accountability and letting somebody know about your whereabouts, where you are and what you're doing. Nothing wrong with that. But when they're so insecure that they become almost, like we said, codependent around you,
or accusing
you, or you can't exist outside of them. That's an issue that they may have not gotten to a place where they're healing or whole yet. Let me move to the second one, and that one is motivations. What's their why for wanting to be married? And people make all kinds of decisions, or there are all kinds of drivers. That's the best way I can say it. Drivers about why they want to connect with you. Some of it can be status. Some of it can be comfortability of lifestyle.
Mhm.
Some of it can be because they're running away from something and they're not necessarily, they're trying to escape something, and you become a fantasy of escapism.
Yes.
So you've got to get down to the why, because the why will reveal, watch this, values. And values are things that people make decisions by.
Right.
They do not change. And so you want to get to the root of the matter of why. I think about when we were dating, and I was very clear about why we're coming together, which brings me right on back to what I said on this past Wednesday night and the last time that we had gathered. Interesting in terms of who's viewing tonight, since we're not talking about sex all that much. I just want to drop that little nugget in there, but we'll come back to that. I often say this: whenever purpose is aligned, passion is fulfilled, and then, or purpose is aligned, promises are fulfilled, and passion is inevitable. So you want to get right on down into what is their why, what's driving them. Because if it's not God-centered and God-driven, or the values are not rooted in the same values that you adhere to, then the relationship can become a strain and it can become difficult. And a lot of times you may not find that out until after you have gotten involved in a relationship. And so now there's got to be an intervention that's got to happen spiritually and naturally, if you will, in some dynamics. Go ahead.
Right. One of the things that we're going to talk about in the acid test is, choose your burn. What kind of burn do you want in your marriage? Do you want the passion and the fire that's burning in your marriage, or do you want the fire of trials that you would have to go through? So taking that inventory is very important. But when I think about motivations, I think about three things. I think about money, material, and movement. And I'm talking about body movement. It's usually money, material, or movement that moves or drives our decisions. And so we have to check our heart. Sometimes we have to even take an inventory of what, and I go back to, what are we speaking to ourselves? What are we talking? What is our conversation to ourselves when it comes to a relationship or the timing of a relationship? Are we rushing into something? They say fools rush in. Are we rushing into it because we think that our time is running out? Are we rushing into it because we really want to feel the heat of somebody else, or the closeness, or the comfort of having somebody else in our presence? Have we become satisfied with ourselves? Have we allowed God to fulfill us and make us whole on the inside, so we don't feel like we have to have somebody? What is that movie? She's got to have it. Lord have mercy. Don't take me back.
Lord have mercy. You went all the way back to Spike Lee, 1980. Lord Jesus.
But no, it's not that we've got to have it. Is that we have made ourselves open and available, so that if something does come in our life, we are an enhancement to their life, and they're an enhancement to ours. What you do not want, and I've said this in a previous broadcast, is someone leeching off of you. You don't want a parasitic type relationship, where I just need that person. Why do you need them? Ask yourself the question, why do I need them? Why? We have got to be able to be with or without a person and be happy with ourselves, all by ourselves. So that we don't become the kind of person that drains the life out of another. Sometimes there's vampire relationships going on all around us.
Oh, say that again.
Are just sucking the life out of the other person. And everything has to be about them, and everything has to, and they're just sucking the life. And then you lose your joy in a relationship like that, where once you thought was going to be just great and grand, you start to lose the joy when life is being sucked out and you're the one giving and giving and giving, and they're taking and taking and taking, and you feel like I can't give anymore. I have nothing else. So we want to be very, very careful about that. And even in that, it goes back to the conversation. Goes back. Eleanor Roosevelt said something that I always like. She said, "Small minds talk about people." In the relationship. And in your conversations, are they always talking about what somebody else did, or they have a better relationship, or I want that? You can model after certain relationships, but it shouldn't be everything that you talk about shouldn't be a comparison to somebody else, or a comparison with their past. Oh, you do that so much better than the other person did. Oh man, be careful. Small minds talk about people. Average mind talk about events. All they can talk about is the last event that happened.
The last thing that took place.
But great minds discuss ideas. Then you have a person who's open to new possibilities. Who's open to faith. Who's open to create new things. You want somebody who talks about ideas more so. Yes, we're going to talk about people. Yes, we're going to talk about events. But if that's the sum total of the conversation and it never expands to, I can see this happening, or I can
Right.
see us doing this together. Start to reevaluate and take inventory.
Yeah, you got to reevaluate. I think all of that is so good tonight. Listen, tonight we're talking about answering the question, are they marriageable or not? And so we first talked about mental health and then getting a good look at people's motivations and their why. We want you, let's do a quick comment check-in tonight. If you've got questions, put them inside of the chat. We want to make sure that we respond to those. We see Tamika, I see you joined us tonight. My line brother, Elihu King, God bless you, man. Thank you for being in here.
Great to see you.
Yeah, and then my friend from India is on tonight. We're going to wrap this up and finish it up. If you've got questions, put them inside the comment section. We'll be sure to respond to those. But we're talking tonight about whether or not people are marriageable or not. And as you said, everybody's marriageable, but where are they in the process? And these things in the process that we're discussing tonight kind of give us a glimpse. We've said it's a little bit too difficult to understand if someone's marriageable or not, simply because many things you may not find out until after you get married, which is why it's important for the time process to watch people over time to find out exactly where it is that they are in terms of the dynamic of the relationship. You already went there. I'm going to go ahead and go here tonight with this one. Okay. And that is money.
Yeah.
What is their, when I say money, I'm looking at what is their value of money. Okay. What's the value of money? What state are they in? Of course, that has to do with careers and credit and cash flows and all that kind of stuff. But how do they value money? Does money become a tool for them? Is it a steam builder for them? Is it an identity for them? Or is it a resource to be able to get them toward purpose and vision? That's critically important. And then once you understand the state that they are in, you've got to ask yourself a tough question. Can you dwell with them while they're in the process?
Right.
While they're in the process of a career or credit repair or developing more cash flow? Can you go through that process with them? We often say without any finance, there is no romance. It's a little, sometimes it can be very difficult. Critically important. Now, remember, I've got to say this because in second time or next time around relationships, 40, 50, 60 years old, rebuilding, it does take time.
Right.
And so you've got to make sure that you're linked in with somebody, as we preached on Sunday, tied together, connected with somebody that understands the value of money in its proper context and in its proper place. And it's not a self-esteem or identity booster for them, but rather a resource on their way toward progress in their lives. Go ahead. Anything else you want to add on that?
When I think about money, you've got two sides of the coin.
Yeah.
You can have one where they have no money, and then they feel sorry for themselves and feel like, well, because you have it, you need to give it to me. No. Sometimes, can I speak to women? Some women need to have their own. We need to have our own. It's great when the man is covering and he can provide, but there ought to be something in us that's industrious and says, I want to be a help to my husband. The Proverbs 31, she was multifaceted. She considered a field and bought it. She got food from merchant ships from afar. She didn't just rest on, well, I'm just going to let him take care of me and nothing else. That's great. If that's your ideal and you have agreed as a couple to do that. But it's a good idea to have your own too. It's a good idea to actually be industrious and allow the two of you to build something greater than just the one person working alone. And and sometimes you can't always work out of the home, especially when there's young children. Right. And I'm not saying you absolutely have to work outside of the home, but I am saying be industrious. Don't sit at home all day and watch TV. And it can flip the coin because a lot more women are in the workforce. It can flip. There shouldn't be a man just sitting at home watching TV all day. And then the wife comes home and then nothing has been done other than them sitting in front of that TV. So that can be a sore spot and cause resentment.
PlayStation all day.
That's what children and teens do, but not so with spouses.
And even with children and teens, that's got to come to an end at some point. I'm just saying. Go ahead. I'm just saying. When we get 18, 19, 20. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got 25-year-olds that are still playing PlayStation all day long. It's off the chain. Go ahead.
But that, and then the other part of it is when someone does have quite a bit of money, and they think that they can buy you. or they can buy your relationship, or buy your affection, or buy your attention.
I'm gonna talk to men
Be
on
careful
that in a
about that as well.
Yeah.
And it can flip on either side.
Yes.
The woman can buy a watch or buy this, and they're buying their affection and not necessarily winning them with who they are, and their character and the substance of who they are, because you want the substance of who you are to speak more volumes than your material possessions.
Yes.
So when it comes to money, how do they value it when it comes to God?
Yeah.
Are they givers? Do they want to tithe? And if Christianity, because some people are not Christians watching the show,
right?
But how do they spend their money?
Right.
Do they not share?
Philanthropic? Do they give, share? Yeah.
Because there's some relationships neither want to give to either one. They do mine is mine, yours is yours, and neither we're
gonna agree about you take care of that bill, this kind of bill, and all that.
And if that it's anyway, I'm not even gonna go there because that can go all different kinds of levels.
Do about 25 seconds. Do about 25 seconds of it, because you need to hit a little bit of that. You need to hit a little bit of that, because the whole idea of mine is mine and yours is yours, and never till the two shall meet. Whoever is the more detailed person, I do agree with that. Let them handle the finances, but there's got to be a discussion about what's got to be taken care of, how it's going to be taken care of, what you can contribute to, what you can do, what you cannot do. Be very upfront and open and honest about that, so that when there is a need for something to be done, you don't have a problem coming to your spouse to ask, because you're a generous person. And then also, hey, I may not be able to do it on this day, but I can do it on this day to ensure that it actually gets taken care of and gets done. See, that discussion about money we're talking about the value of it now. What does it mean to you? And there are some people who come from environments where spouses didn't share their resources, didn't make their other spouse aware of what they had. And so now when someone gets or gains access to resource, they can begin to hoard it, become stingy with it, because it becomes a means of protection for them. You find that out in the dating process. And then in that process, you make a determination of how long can I dwell with that. And that then gives you some pointers into how I need to conduct myself with this person, given their experience on either side of that. I mean, we could just go all day long with that, but we're just getting out of it.
Because money, you want to be able to build towards something.
Yes.
You don't want to be in the same state that you're in, and one day, 10 years from now.
Right.
You want to be able to build together.
Right.
Because you've got to start seeing the two of you as a corporation after, we are the empire.
Right.
And sometimes I think about that show, Empire, but we are the empire.
Right.
What kind of, there's a lady, Tyranny Parker, I think, has, how are you building your empire? How are you raising the money together? How are you spending and setting it aside? How are you even praying and seeking God about your money?
Right.
Because sometimes
did you see the t-shirts? Couples who pray.
But really, we've got to set some things on the table. If you're not ready or you're not willing to share or open up about where you are with your finances or what you want to do, because sometimes we have dreams and things that we want to, we want to see happen, but we can't do it if we're always stuck somewhere else trying to cover and do this and pay. So be open and honest about where you are, and if you and grow together in it. That's all I can really say. Grow together with it.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Remember, 40, 50 seconds, 60, second time or next time around relationships. Recovery time, especially for men, can take a while, especially if you had children before, because now you either do an alimony or child support, and those things are very real, and it can take you a while before you're able to get back on your feet. A change in careers can take place. All of that dynamic. We may need to do a show or two just dedicated to that process of that and what that looks like for each of the spouses. We got a great question in here tonight. I want to just throw this one in really, really quickly. A great question tonight. I'm trying to actually get on that question. Here it is right here. Is dating just for companionship wrong? Does dating have to lead to marriage? It depends on what your end goal is, okay? If your end goal is you want to be married one day again, then absolutely you don't want to lead somebody on. You want to be very clear and very upfront. I enjoy your company. I enjoy spending time with you. I enjoy connecting with you. I enjoy looking for companionship, but I'm not looking to be married again. Now, as I say that, you got to be very clear about your own intentions, because somebody sitting next to me wasn't trying to be married, but you see, she got on one of these. Come on, hold it up, hold it up, hold it up, hold it up. There it is. That's a nice ring too. Come on, hold it up again. It's a nice ring.
You did a wonderful job with the ring.
Speak to that. Go ahead.
But if you already know that you're not ready, some of us aren't ready to actually engage in marriage, and you're not trying to run anybody off.
Right.
I was trying to run you off, but
you were.
I was trying to run you off.
But let me speak to that. My discernment understood that was coming from a place of hurt, and that you were trying to figure out what my motivation was. Because remember what you used to say, what you want?
You just gotta tell all over.
Did I put that out there tonight? Did I put it out there?
But to answer the question, this is Erica. Dating is dating just for companionship.
Wrong.
To develop friendships, I think, is a good thing.
Yes.
Because we learn about the opposite sex through friendships with the opposite sex.
Yes.
And when you say companionship, it depends on how far you want that companionship to go. So dating to get to know people and get to know different personalities, I don't think there's anything wrong with dating.
Not at all.
But if you know that, or if you believe in your heart that God is leading you to marriage, then give it some time to watch what we're working with.
Yeah.
Watch what you're working with, because sometimes you can be in a companionship relationship and it changes. But you'll know that you're ready, and the other person should have some kind of indication that they're also ready. Now, when it came to the two of us, yes, it was a place of hurt, but it was also a place of protection. Because divorce, it ruined me financially. It absolutely ruined me financially. So to rebuild from that took time, and I didn't want anything interfering with the building process. And I wanted to provide my children a home, because it's like having the rug swept up from underneath of you and having things stolen from you unjustly. And so my focus was, I need to get a home for my children. I need to get them settled. I need to get my credit right, and this, that, and the other. So I had an idea in mind of where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do with my finances, and marriage wasn't in the equation for me, because it had already devastated me. So
what's
much.
that phrase you used to use?
Jail.
No, did you? No. Jail is local. Jail is the local time of a holding cell. You said marriage was like a prison.
Oh, that's right.
You put federal time to that.
Yeah.
Listen, we almost way out of time, but absolutely not. Dating for the companionship is not wrong, but be upfront and honest. Because if you're connected with somebody who is looking to be married, you need to be open and honest with them that you're looking at being friends and developing a relationship with each other in terms of companionship, so that they are not in a place where they're looking at something totally different and you're looking at something totally different, because you don't want to waste their time, nor do you want to waste your time. I think that is critically important. Again, we're talking about second time, next time, or around questions. We'll take one more before we close out tonight, but I got to get to the last one. And that one is this: memory. Have they gotten free from themselves and their own history? Have they gotten free from, and note what we said earlier. Do they spend a lot of time talking about what somebody else did, or do they own their own stuff?
Right.
That's part of the way that you know if someone got healed or not. Now they may have been affronted, offended, a betrayal, abuse. Those things may have happened to them, but those things don't just happen overnight. Have they owned their part in it? And that requires maturity for us to own our part in it, in terms of what took place and the dissolution and the breakup of a divorce or a relationship that was long-term that broke apart. What role did they play in being able to own their part in it? That speaks to maturity, and if they are ready to re-engage again.
And some of that part, Bishop, some of that part is the lack of hearing counsel before entering into that marriage. Some of that taking responsibility is to admit that somebody, I was told not to get into this and I did it anyway. I was warned about this. I heard God say no, but I went for it anyway. Some of that is the accountability part that we have to admit to. And that can be difficult. And then we get into a position of having to forgive ourselves.
Right. You gotta be in a position to forgive ourselves. We're gonna do this last question and then be out of here on tonight. Look, this person says, I won't put this one up on the screen. I needed this 10 years ago. How do I get out now? that is a whole different
But let me
kind of
say
topic.
this. Can I say this? Because it took me 6 years to get out of an abusive marriage. It took me 6 years because
Now, if you're dealing with abuse,
and the difficulty.
speak to that.
So
Go ahead.
the first thing you want to do is get alone with God and pray. I remember I went on a 21-day fast and had a doctor say, if you go back to this, it's going to kill you.
Yeah.
But I went on a fast, and the last day of it, I had the strength and the courage to say, I'm not staying here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm leaving. That was hard because I went back over and over again. And every time I went back, it got a little bit worse. But really getting alone with God and letting him strengthen you and giving you the power and the will to say, I can't do this anymore. And it's not based on what other people think or what other people see, because other people can see a perfect image on the outside, but you know what's going on the inside. If you know that it's killing you, you've got to know that Christ came so that we can have life and life more abundantly. If something is killing you and stealing your life, stealing your joy, we can have those temporary moments that joy is stolen. But if it's actually, because when I got back here, I was in England. I came back and I remember my mother saying, you look like a zombie, but I had lost all the confidence and everything else. So just, what's going on, seek God. And get that strength and courage to walk away.
And let me say this on the heels of that, because time is getting away, and we maybe do a whole show around this as we have some more discussions about marriage and divorce and those kind of things. Be mindful, hear me on this, be mindful of manipulative people and manipulative situations. And I will even go there, manipulative religion, because people will try to hold you and bind you into something using scripture as a means for you to suffer, talking about you've got to, I heard this commentary said to me directly, you have to earn your way out of this marriage. And so knowing what's going on behind the scenes, nobody really knows that like you do in terms of what you're experiencing. So don't allow yourself to be manipulated by anybody. And I'll say this, no matter what their title is in your life, be very careful with that, because that can lead to disaster and put you in places. God has not called us to suffer in the sense of abuse. Now there's suffering for righteousness' sake, but not for someone to be sexually, financially, emotionally, spiritually, and even relationally abusing you as a person. And you're not going to be more saved because you endure all of that. There's a whole nother discussion in that, because some people are married for image purposes, but not married behind the scenes.
And some marriages can be saved. There are some marriages that can be saved.
Can be salvaged.
And I was sharing with Bishop, I remember praying for my marriage and praying that God would change certain aspects of it. And for a little while, it looked like it would be changed. But then things turned and it got worse and worse and worse. And I remember hearing the Lord say permission. And giving me that permission. Now I have people on the outside, religious folks, saying, "Oh, you're walking away from your marriage. Oh, you're this and that." In that condemnation set in, and so I kept trying to go back, and I kept trying to fix it, and I kept trying to pray and make it work, but it wasn't working. Now, I can honestly say that because I put in so much work and because I put in the prayer, it devastated me walking out of that court. I don't know why it hurt so bad, but it did. And I think it hurt so bad because I knew God honored covenant. And I hated that. I felt like I failed God in breaking a covenant. And so I repented for that and allowed God to do the healing work that I needed. Because I had to come to a realization that what I was in was not of God. Even I don't care how.
That's the maturation part.
I don't care how good it looked on the outside. If the inside is rotten, the whole thing gets corrupted.
I'm gonna say this
and everything else.
I'll say this and land the plane for that question tonight, and that is this: people are people, and you will know them by the fruit that they bear. So once you come to understand, to know a person, know who they are, the reality is people really don't change. If they've been allowed to get away with what they've done in the abusive area for so long, that's an abusive person that we're dealing with. And then people really do not change, whether it's spirit, unless they listen to the Holy Spirit. And there's time. The question said, I needed this 10 years ago. 10 years is a pattern. And so the likelihood of change happening there may be slim to none, but God is a miracle worker, and he can do any and everything. Look, we're just way over time tonight, but these were good questions. We thank you so much for asking. Tonight was a great opportunity to talk about, are they marriageable or not? We'll make sure we'll come back and address some of this again on another show. We want to thank you all so much for tuning in. Make sure that you share this, get it to as many people as you can. But we got to go. We're way over time. We'll see you again at the end of the month on that 4th Monday. Take care. God bless.
God bless.
We love you all.
Love
Bye-bye.
You. Bye-bye.